two things which I found were life-changing when I realised them. Afters and stories. Sorry to burst your bubble, everyone. Nobody cares at all what you do. They don't care about your job title. They don't care about your deliverables. What they care about is the afters. Why are they better off after you've done it? So nobody cares that I'm a sales consultant. Nobody cares that I deliver masterclasses. What they care about is after I've finished, their sales have gone up by 20%. My job's to help people be more successful. I do it through the prism of communication, because when you think about it, how good you are at communicating absolutely impacts on how good your life is. Every conversation, every email, every presentation, every chat, every, proposal, everything has an impact on your happiness. And my background, you mentioned, my mum is blind, so she can't see at all. So when I was a kid learning how to speak, I was fixated really on how can I explain the world so my mum doesn't miss out. So I became really good at describing stuff, I guess, to someone who doesn't see the world the way I do. And as I've come into adult land, what I've realised is nobody sees the world the way we do. They have different priorities to us. If you're selling, customers don't see why they should see you. They don't see why they should give you any money. They don't see why they should choose you. If you're a leader and you're talking to your team and you say, I've got a brilliant new strategy, and the team think, yeah, but that sounds like quite hard work for me. So you think you've got these great things, but people just don't see the world the way we do. So if we can just unpick that, properly put ourselves in their shoes, properly, not pretend, but properly see the world the way they do, well, we're able to communicate much better and achieve much more stuff. And everyone benefits. It's not just you, but it's them as well.
How do you start to unpack and put yourself in other people's shoes?
Okay, so two ways, really. Number one is ask, and number two is lead. And what I mean by ask is prepare good questions, as in literally, Mark, sit down and prepare. What am I going to ask here? Nobody does this, right? So what they do is they might spend a long time thinking, what am I going to say? What are my main messages? What do I want people to hear? But as we all know, the best communications are interactive, and the best way to make it interactive is to ask them stuff. And the best way to ask good stuff is to prepare the questions you're going to ask. So I spend a long time working out the best questions to ask to really find what drives people. And I did that by, yes, talking to other salespeople, but also talking to other professions where questioning is essential to their success. So attorneys need to be good at questioning or they're not going to win the case. Counselors, consultants, anyone, like hostage negotiators, even spoke to people like that. I just ask as many people as I can, what are the best questions you ask? What do you find really helps you? So however long you've spent preparing good questions to ask, almost always isn't enough, because you can always be better at it. So that's the first one. So ask. And you might think, Andy, why is there anything else? The trouble is, if you ask people stuff, they don't know what they don't know. So sometimes you have to lead them as well. So when I speak to people, I'll ask them questions and so on, but then I'll lead them by saying, in my experience, when I've spoken to other people who've said what you've just said, they often can have issues with A or B or C. Do any of those resonate with you? And they go, oh yeah, actually, now you mention it, B. And I go, oh, tell me more about that. And then we're off again. So you've got to be good at asking questions, but also you have to teach them things they didn't know. So they're my two things, ask, lead.
I'm surprised that listen wasn't in there.
Well, I didn't say it, but if you ask, clearly you're going to listen, right? It's a funny thing about listening, because people often say, do you think you're above average at listening? And every single person I've met thinks they're above average at listening. Like everyone does. You do, Mark, I do. We all think we're above average. How many people are listening to this? Let's say, what you on now? 80 billion? So you've got 80 billion people listening to this. And I bet every one of the 80 billion thinks they're above average at listening. And then you have to point out how averages work. Right? So of the 80 billion people listening to us here, 40 billion are worse than average, because that's what an average is. So we all think we're above average, but half of us aren't. Yeah. Now, the only way to be really good at listening is, yes, you have to ask good questions, Al, but then you have to shut up and let them speak. That's why my favourite question in the world, of all the study I've done over the years, my favourite question in the world is, tell me more. So you ask a question, they say something, you go, oh, tell me more about that. Because if you say, tell me more, then you properly begin to find out what other people think. But they see what often happens, Al, people think they're listening, but actually they're just waiting for their turn to speak. So it's like you say to someone, how was your day today? And they go, oh, it was a bit of a disaster really because an elephant ate my head. And then someone goes, yeah, I saw an elephant on telly once the other day. And they think that he just had an elephant at his head. Say, tell me more about that. But we don't. We use what they say to prompt us to speak. Whereas if you say, tell me more, it forces you to shut up. And it forces you to listen. And it forces you to wait, WAIT, which I think stands for, why am I talking?
Andy, when as you've sort of developed, from the time you were describing the world to your mom, and then the work you got into, and the work you've done with the good and the great of the Fortune 100, have you witnessed an evolution or unlocking of your consciousness in that, we often use the symbol of the fist being when you're in the basement of your consciousness and you're operating from a place of fear, and then the open hand, which is the ultimate symbol of creativity and innovation. And that's when you're in the sort of penthouse of your consciousness where you're empathetic and you are leaning in, you're listening, you're doing a lot of asking the right questions. Have you sort of witnessed an evolution within yourself and a realization or an awareness within yourself as you've sort of developed your craft?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yes, I have. And I wasn't aware of it to start with, but then I started reflecting and thought, I'm better now than I was, and I can tell I was because my clients' results are better than they were. What am I doing differently, And there was two things which I found were life-changing when I realized them. Afters and stories. Sorry to burst your bubble, everyone. Nobody cares at all what you do. They don't care about your job title. They don't care about your deliverables. What they care about is the afters. Why are they better off after you've done it? Okay? So nobody cares that I'm a sales consultant. Nobody cares that I deliver masterclasses. What they care about is after I've finished, their sales have gone up by 20%. Yep. So nobody wants me. They want more sales. When you buy an attorney, you don't want the attorney. You just don't want to go to jail. When you speak to a wonderful tax accountant, you don't want a tax accountant. I mean, who wants a tax accountant? But after seeing her, hopefully you're not going to pay as much tax anymore. So nobody wants us. They want the afters of us. So the time when my fist became open was when I suddenly realized people weren't paying for me. They paid for what happened after me. And that's really liberating. Because if you do have these internal barriers, these illusions you set up thinking, I'm not sure I can justify X amount per hour. I'm not sure I can justify X amount for money that's in my head, But they think, no, they're not paying for the hour. They're not paying for what's in my head. They're paying for what happens after they've had an hour with me and the stuff's come out of my head and the sales have gone up. And all of a sudden, if you charge, let's say, £1,000 an hour or whatever the number is, well, that's outrageous for an hour. Why would anyone pay that for an hour? But if you charge £1,000 and they make sales of £1 billion, well, that's a pretty good return on investment. So afters was one thing. I realized my job wasn't to do stuff. My job was to cause stuff for other people. That was very liberating. And the other one, Mark, was stories. So I then looked back to find evidence that I delivered those afters. So you said before about how when we worked together, your sales went up by sort of 10, 20%. That's a good story. When I worked with one of the UK's largest banks, they won a deal worth £2.5 billion. And so after that, they won £2.5 billion. After me, you went up by 10, 20%. After so-and-so, they had an ROI of 11,000%. And so you get, if you focus on the afters and you focus on the stories that provide evidence you deliver those afters, then it's not that you get cocky and arrogant. You just have this quiet, inner calm certainty that you're a valuable asset for people. Because after you, their lives seem to be better.
And I guess the follow-on question to that is, in the work that you do, focusing as you do from that open hand sort of perspective and focusing on the afters and ultimately what they're going to get out of it, did you notice a process whereby this became not about you and it became about being in service of others? You sort of transcended the self. Because I know from the work we've done with you, you're a selfless guy because I've seen how you operate. But obviously underneath all of that, you still want to live a certain lifestyle and you've got aspirations of your own. But the work that you do and the way in which you go about it, you seem to sort of transcend the self quite effortlessly.
Yeah, I feel very comfortable with that. And it ties into the afters and stories thing. So if I feel that after someone's worked with me, they're going to be in a better place, I think I'm doing them a disservice if I don't help them, because I could help them. So in the old days when I first started, it was almost like, please buy from me because I need money and I need to be successful. But after a bit, because my afters and stories, I had evidence it was working. So I began to feel that if someone wants my help and I feel a bit uncomfortable about it, I need to get over myself, because if I help them, let's say, win £1 million of sales, well, if I can't get over myself, I don't help, they're £1 million down and I've cost them, you know? And so I began to feel it's not just that what you do is in service. It's like you have an obligation, really. If you have something that can bring value to other people, you know, so in your case, if you can help somebody open up their fist, I mean, that's literally life-changing for people. And once you have that, it begins to help you feel, you know, I've got a duty here, but also you have to feel it's appropriate yourself. So one of my favorite words in life is fair. Like, things have got to be fair. Like, everybody wants a deal, but nobody wants to be unfair. So if I'm talking to, so I remember Al, actually, we had a chat a while ago when we were working together. You wanted me to do something for you. And it wasn't quite as big a value add because you could have maybe done it or other people could have done it. And we talked about the price and you said, I don't want to pay you that. And I said, I understand that, but my other customers pay me that, so it's not fair on them if you don't. So if you don't think the return on investment's fine, then we shouldn't do it. But if you do think return on investment's fine, we should. But I can't give you 10% off because that's not fair on other people. Yeah? And so having that idea about fairness, so I think I should be paid a fair amount for the value I brought. And I think what I get paid is tiny compared to the value I brought. And I have evidence that backs that up. So that's how I do it. So I don't think I'm being overly selfless. I think I'm being, you know, I'll get 100 quid and you can get 1,000 quid and everyone's happy.
I think that's a really important point, and I'm curious where that extends beyond like a commercial reality. Like, one of the things that I've noticed is that sometimes people find it difficult to just stand in their own truth and be like, this is just what looks fair to me. And to, like, in that situation, you were just like, Al, this is what looks fair to me. I might have not agreed with you. I might have agreed with you, but you were comfortable either way. Like, what advice would you give to people who struggle to just kind of stand in their own truth and be like, well, this is just how I look at the world, without feeling insecure about it? And I guess that's what I'm curious about, because I think there's lots of people listening who are thinking, Andy Bounds sounds freaking amazing, and I wish I could sound and feel as confident in that myself. What advice would you give them? What guidance to help them step into that way of being?
So, great question. Yeah. And it's very nice if anyone does think that, because I think that's about them as well. So that's all lovely. So I go back to what I said before about afters and stories. So the best way to give yourself appropriate confidence, so not like unrealistic arrogance. So you see some politicians around now, you're thinking, why are you talking with this? You've clearly been trained on how to do this, but it just doesn't feel authentic, you know? So it's got to be authentic. So look back at your past experiences and like ask, why are people better off after me? You know, and the best, remember I said before, like ask, like go and speak to them. So one of my favorite conversations I ever had was I worked with a pharmaceutical company a while ago, and I went back to them and said, you know, I'm doing a bit of research. I want to make sure about the value add I'm bringing. Do you mind if I ask you some questions about the work we've just done? They go, fine, fill your boots. What do you want to know? And so I was just asking them all, and I said, like, what do you think has been the greatest value I brought to you? And I thought they'd say, well, you helped us sell this drug in America, which was worth about $2 billion. I was expecting they'd go straight to the money. But what they actually said was, a lot of people who work here, we've seen a lot of stuff here. We're sort of battle-hardened scientists. We look at things in a very, sometimes quite dispassionate way. And since you've come in, there's excited chatter in the corridor. Like, we're seeing people who we never normally see smile, really buzzing with the energy of this. So what you brought to us is this. And I just thought they were going to talk about the $2 billion. That doesn't matter. We're a multi-billion-dollar organization anyway. But actually getting people like this excited is incredible. And so asking other people about the afters you've delivered is really good because they'll teach you things you didn't know. Yeah. And then I remember when we were changing our strapline for our company, I spoke to loads of our customers who knew me really well and said, I'm thinking of changing the strapline. I'm thinking it should be this. What do you think? And loads of our customers said, you're missing this out. You're missing this out. So I asked people who had afters from me for their feedback. And that was the first thing out, because what it then does, it takes you outside of yourself then. So whether I do or I don't think I know what I'm doing, these people who I respect think I do know what I'm doing. You know? So ask people who've been on the receiving end of you what has been the greatest value, because that gives you your afters, but it also gives you your stories. And sometimes people will say, do you know what, I'll put that in writing for you, and you've now got a testimonial. After I worked with Andy Bounds, this happened. Since Andy taught me how to do this, this happened. Yeah, you could easily get someone saying, since I listened to your podcast, this has been the benefit that I've had. You were telling me a story before about someone who wrote a book and couldn't be bothered with writing the book, and then someone gave them feedback. After I read your book, it just changed something in my life and everything was fine. Well, that's life-changing when you get feedback like this, right? So it's afters and stories, but ask other people about the value you've given them, because it takes it away from your own feelings.
Well, I love that. And I'm going to just say something. You don't sound very British. And what I mean by that is, I think that one of the things people have got to take on board is that you get to choose what stories you onboard, what stories you tell, and what stories you listen to, both externally and internally. And it's just struck me as you were saying that our ability to actually hear them and onboard those stories, when someone says, you know what, Andy, people have got more bounce in their step, they're happier at work since you started working with us. It's the difference between some people going, oh no, that's not me, and going, great, thanks, and onboarding that, versus listening to sometimes the negative self-talk that I think gets in the way. Like, that's what I'm hearing in this, is like the power of ask the questions, listen, and choose to onboard them. And the more, like, I'm hazarding a guess, the more you speak your stories, the more like they're just part of your being. And it can be the same for anyone. Like, the more practice they become in kind of asking questions, listening, and then speaking that back into the world, that their whole way of being shifts as a result. And I'm curious to if that resonates with you or with Billows, just to kind of that was my insight listening to you.
Yeah, it's a great way to put it, because I think that, I mean, I'm like really old now. I'm 54 and my knees don't work. I haven't got any hair, and the years haven't been kind, and all these sorts of things. And so I'm different at 54 than I was at 44. I'm not saying everyone. Like, don't worry, everyone, you're not going to lose your hair. It's a horrible thing. So what happens is that when I was younger, Al, when I got these stories, I would absorb them into myself, but then quite often I would say them, so if I was talking to a customer, whereas now I have such inner calm, because I've been doing it for a while, I don't feel the need to say them. So to start with, I might have said them out loud quite a lot when saying, well, why should I hire you? And I say, well, I don't know, but when I work with this pharmaceutical company, this happened. Do you think that will be useful for you? Whereas now, because I've been doing this so long and I feel really comfortable inside, I probably don't say it out loud very much anymore. I just have inner calm. And it's like Kung Fu Panda, it's like inner peace. So I'm not saying that that's something that people should aspire to, because you got to find what works for you. But unless you have afters and stories, you have no evidence that you deliver value. But did you notice the question I asked, Al? I didn't say, give me feedback on our work together. Did you remember the question I said? Of all the stuff we've done together, what did you find added most value? So my question is, why was I useful? All right. And so when they say they're useful because you made doctors laugh, all right, but if I say, give me some feedback, they might say, well, it was fine. So choice of questions gives you the right sort of value, yeah?
You live what I would consider an incredible life. You always seem to be happy, and I know that you're a family man, and So I'm curious, like, what's the secret? Like, what's the secret to you living this life that seems to be balanced and harmonious, and maybe it's all an illusion, but it seems that you've got some of what people are after, and so I'd be kind of curious to hear what insights you have about kind of your broader life experience and what's at play there.
Okay, cool. So, yeah, well, thank you. I am quite happy, like irritatingly so. I'm sure people who see me a lot. I'm quite a positive guy. So there are certain things I've taught myself over the years. I'm quite optimistic anyway. I'm quite bubbly. But there's a few things I've found that help me. So I'll give you two, and if you want any more, then so two. We'll do something which is quite sexy, and we'll do something which is extremely tedious. But both of them are really important. So we'll do the sexy one to start with. I said before about afters and stories and all that stuff, but another thing which I try and live my life by is what I call yes if thinking. So can you do something? Yes if. So the first time I ever heard the sentence yes if, I was reading a biography about Walt Disney, and he had this yes if approach to life. So if someone says, can we build Disneyland? He would say, yes if somebody else pays for it. Yes if there are good transport links. Yes if we partner with a TV studio. Yes if we get celebrity endorsement. Yes if, yes if. And so he always just looked at the positives. He said, like, yes, if he looked at the enablers. And he said that very often in life, people say no because, so can you build Disneyland? No, because we can't afford it. No, because we haven't got any transport links. No, because there's no celebrity endorsement. And the way I think about it, if Walt Disney can build Disneyland, well, I should be able to have a nice little life. And so I always think about yes, if. So can I have a good work-life balance? Well, yes, if I really protect my time a lot. So when I'm doing work with respect to my family, they're not allowed in it. When I'm doing family with respect to my customers, they're not allowed in it. Yes, if I can be really good at being positive. So, for example, if I've had a hard day at work, before I go downstairs to see the kids, I'll just have a moment and think, if I was going to be the best dad in the world, how would I behave when I went downstairs? What would the best dad in the world do now? He wouldn't go down and complain about how hard his work is. He probably would stay up here for a couple more minutes, cheer himself up before he went down. And so having this sort of yes if mentality, I find that really enabling, Al, because it helps me focus on the positive. So that's the first thing. And the second thing, I'll do the boring thing, and then you can tell me what if you want to talk about any more of this. So as well as thinking yes if and afters and stories and all that, the other thing, which is very boring but it's very important, is to use two words beginning with D, diary and discipline. So my diary, my Outlook calendar, I'm really disciplined with what goes in it. So never, ever, ever will I do work before 9 o'clock in the morning because I do the school runs and da-da-da. So I have, my diary is blocked out, family time, until 9 o'clock in the morning. Right? I always want to make sure I have lunch breaks, so half an hour is blocked in. I always want to make sure I ring my customers I like best, so I've got time blocked in, ring my lovely customers. I get lots of energy from going outside, so I have time blocked in my diary, go outside. I get lots of energy from laughing, so sometimes I'll put in, it sounds daft this in my diary, watch something funny. So I just go on YouTube and find Michael Muckett. I don't care what it is, just something. And so my diary is peppered with things that give me energy and richness of life and variety and happiness. So I don't fit my happy things around bloody work. I fit work around my happy things. All right, so I know before my week starts, I'm going to see the children every morning and every evening, and I'm going to have lunch, and I'm going to laugh a few times, and I'm going to speak to people I like, and I'm going to learn some stuff, and I'm going to meet lovely people like you two, and I'm going to, and amongst all that, I'll fit in the day job.
I hope 80 billion people are listening to that, because everybody's operating model these days, bar a lucky few, I think is absolute haywire. I think that's fantastic.
It is, Mark. And when you think about it, people often talk about time management, but anytime I hear the word time, I think the word diary, the Outlook calendar, because what you do with your time, all three of us enjoying ourselves immensely here, but the fact is we're all busy chaps and we don't have time for this, but yet here we are because it's in the calendar. But the thing is, when people say they don't have time, it's almost like they're abdicating responsibility. I've heard people say, I didn't have time to prepare for that meeting. And it's almost like they're saying, it's not my fault, it's time's fault. If there'd been 25 hours in the day, I would have been all over it. Like, no, you wouldn't. It's just like this, it's our fault. Our lives are our fault. Our diary's our fault. So if I told you I didn't have time to prepare for that meeting, you say, yes, I know life's busy, isn't it, Andy? But if I say I didn't schedule time in my diary to prepare for that meeting, then it sounds like it's my fault. So I want my life to be my fault. So people sometimes say to me things like, I don't like having back-to-back meetings in my diary. I think, well, don't put them in then. And they go, well, I just get invited to them. It's a meeting's invitation. It's not a court summons. You don't have to go. Or you can say, I can't make the whole 30 minutes. Can I just do the first 25? Or I say, I'm busy that day, but I can only help with those two things. Can you do them first? Because then I'll need to ring off. And if anyone is hearing that is going, well, that won't work because, that's no because thinking. So I would say to all the 80 billion of you listening to this, apply yes if thinking. Can you free up 2 hours a week to give yourself a happier life? You're not allowed to say no because. Yes, if I had shorter meetings. Yes, if I was better at saying no to people. Yes, if I blocked time out to see the kids at bath time. Yes, if I asked someone who I respect to coach me and help me with this. Yes, if I got someone to check in to make sure I was doing it. Yes, if I bought all of Andy Bounds' books, 20 copies of each one. That should help. All right? Yes, if. What a wonderful gift to give. 80 billion people listening to this. Each one saved 2 hours a week. That's 160 billion hours we've given the world. That's just this week. All right? Now, there's some powerful afters for you.
Yeah. And just building on that, and where Al was going. So, as a human being who is, I would argue, in flow a lot of the time, you're operating from that very comfortable place. You're probably not scaring yourself to death with your thoughts. Was there a time in your evolution, in your growth, in your development, where you suddenly caught yourself observing yourself and going, that's not me. That narrative, or that narrative, or that identity, or whatever it is, that's actually not who I am. I have the ability to create the reality I want.
Yeah, very much so. A few things. So I started out sort of, I suppose you call it a corporate trainer, like going to places, doing 6-hour course on whatever. And I realized after a bit I wasn't thinking in the right way. And I wasn't actually that happy. I'd say to Mrs. Bounds on Sunday night, right, I'm off. I'll see you on Friday. Because it was just, so I wasn't at home enough. Wasn't seeing Mrs. Bounds enough. I was being successful, but I wasn't, so the money was fine, but nothing else was. So I begun to think that's not what I'm like. I read that thing about the yes if thing. And then very soon afterwards, I read something, and then I started researching it, and it was all about the way your brain works, and basically, so I've read loads of it. So extremely simply, your brain often thinks in twos. You think fight or flight. You think of two options, and if both of them are rubbish, you think there's nothing you can do. So clearly, there's more than two options. So if you can train yourself to think in threes, what happens is your brain then begins to open up, and you think of more things. So when I was stuck in this lucrative rut of doing full-day training, I then applied the yes if thinking, and I thought, right, I need to think of at least 3 solutions to this. But when I say 3, I really mean about 10. So I got a drink of my favourite drink, which was great because it was gin, so I had a fine old time. And I just got a piece of paper and a pen, and I wrote down as many things I could do as possible to change my life, right? So, number 1, stop this job I'm doing now. Number 2, keep going as I am doing forever. Number 3, not work Fridays anymore. Number 4, stop doing full-time training. Number 5, see if I could do some stuff remotely. Number 6, see if I could outsource any of it. Number 7, number 8, number 9. And I just went down and I spent ages on this, Mark. And in the end, I came up with 27 things I could do. And it was really the most empowering thing I've ever done in my life, actually, because I thought there was nothing I could do. But after a pint of gin, hey, there was 27 things I could do. I mean, I couldn't read them, and I burst into tears afterwards, but it was all fine. So once I got these 27 things, I looked at the 27 things, and I asked myself 2 questions, both beginning with S, size and speed. So size, which of these would have a big impact? And speed, which will be easy. So I've got 27 things, and I look at them, which of these would have a big impact and which would be easy? And I graded each one, like super fast, super speed, whatever it might be. And by the time I'd done that, there was about 5 or 6 things that were all huge and were all instant. And so I just did them. And that is a really good way to change your life, I find. So don't be lazy, stop at 2 or 3 things and think there's nothing I can do. You get a piece of paper and a pen and a pint of gin, and you think, I'm not allowed to stop until I've got 10 good ideas. And if you can't get any on your own, like, ring me up, or ring you up, Mark, or ring you up, Al. Like, just talk to clever people and come up with as many ideas as you can. And then you look through this list of ideas, and you choose the thing that S, as a good size, it's going to have a big impact, and S, speed, is not going to be too onerous to do, and then just crack on. That's the end of that. So that's my Forrest Gump ending. That's all I know about that.
What do you think gets in people's way, Andy? Like, so I'm just like listening to that, and I'm with you. So it's like, come up with more than 2, create the list, and bloody do stuff. Like, don't not do the things that you then see to do. What do you think gets in people's way? And if you were master of the universe and could drop something into their awareness that might just blow that up, what would it be?
Okay, the single biggest thing that ruins everything is habits. Yeah. So human beings, we're all creatures of habit. The way your brain works, it wants to automate stuff. Yeah, because that way it doesn't need to occupy itself with things you've done. So when you clean your teeth in the morning, you don't pick up your toothpaste and put it in your hair, right? Because you know what to do, so you do it without thinking. So your brain seeks to automate stuff. And that's good with things like cleaning teeth. It's not very good for the Monday morning update meeting that we have with our team and everybody hates. Because we just will have another one next week, even though everybody hates it. It's just stupid. But like, so with respect, that's just stupid. Why would you keep doing something? Hey, like every time I bang the head with this piece of paper, it really hurts. Like, I'm going to keep doing it though, because you just get in a habit. So habits trump logic. They trump common sense. They trump everything. They're the most powerful thing there is. I mean, I've seen salespeople who have said, Andy, I've created a proposal by copying last week's proposal and changing the logo of the client name. And I go, that's really clever. Let me just ask you, the proposal you copied last week, did it win the sale? And quite often Al, they go, no, it didn't. You're like, why are you copying something that lost? I mean, it's stupid. Like, why would you do that? It's just stupid. But like, we're creatures of habit. So the single biggest problem are the habits that we're in. And it's very easy to assume that we're doing best practice. We're not. We're doing habit practice. We're doing usual practice. I bet most emails that we all write look quite similar to the emails we wrote last week, even if they didn't work. I remember where we were, this last example, I feel quite passionate about this. At the place where we first met, the 3 of us, there was a gentleman who came up to me and said, Andy, I'm really struggling to get through to this client. I've written 9 different emails and he hasn't replied to any. What do you advise I write in the 10th email? It's like, stop emailing him. Like, do something else. So the thing that causes the problem, Al, is there's lots of things like, you know, you might not get your diary right. You might think no because instead of yes if. You might not have heard of afters. You might not have done stories. But the thing that underpins why we do what we do are the habits that we're in. All right? So if I could do one thing to put my magic hat on to change the universe, it will be to educate people how they change their habits. There's 3 things you need to do. All right? Number 1, prioritize. So what do you need to change? So of all the things you could change, you list your 27 things, have your pint of gin, work out the things that are going to have the biggest impact. So that's the first thing to do. Prioritize what you need to change. Secondly, diarize. You need to put it in your diary because otherwise you're not going to have time to do it. You'll get to the end of the week and say, couldn't do it. It's not my fault. It's time's fault. Okay, so number 1, prioritize what you need to change. So come up with a big list, choose your best one. Number 2, diarize, put it in your diary. And number 3, socialize, get someone to hold you to account. Because we all know that if you have a reminder in your diary and you can't be bothered that day, you're just going to press dismiss. So you need a coach, you need one of you two, you need somebody to check in with you every week and go, have you done it? Have you done it? Have you done it? So those 3 words, they all end in I's. They're quite easy to remember. Prioritize. So what you need to change. Secondly, diarize. You need to go in your diary every week. And then socialize. Who's going to hold you to account? Because if any of those 3 are missing, I can guarantee 3 months from now, you'll be in exactly the same habits you are now.
To what extent does the work you do around communication really hinge on building trust and psychological safety between and authentic human connections because of the nature of the conversation or the questions or the curiosity or the style of communication?
Yeah, it's essential. Now, how you build trust. Trust is one of these things, it's an outcome. You can't just build trust. You have to do something that causes trust to happen, right? It's like when people say, I want to be more confident when I do presentations, Andy. As I'm going to say, well, there you go. Confidence complete. Confidence is like trust. You have to do stuff to cause these things to happen. So what we do is with trust, we think like when we're preparing for our meetings with people, our conversations with people, the thing to do is think, what can I do so they feel as at ease as quickly as possible? Yeah. And there's various things that you can do. One of them is work out how you're going to start the meeting. Like, how are you going to ice break it? How are you going to have a nice conversation? What can you say that shows a bit of a connection with them, which is appropriate? Another thing you can do is when the time's right, is you can make sure that you ask good questions that show absolute passionate interest in them. And make sure you say, tell me more. Get them speaking, right? Another thing you can do to build trust is talk about stories or teaching. In other words, if someone says they've got a particular challenge and you say, oh, I heard someone else say that recently. Do you mind if I tell you what I told them? Right? So there's stories there. There's empathy. Or I could teach them something and say, one thing I've seen that people often find helpful is X or Y. Do you think either of those might help you? So I'm trying to give value as soon as I can in the conversation. I want a good introduction. I want a good first impression. I want to ask good questions. I want to tell them stories that reassure them. I want to teach them things, all this sort of stuff. But if you do what most people do, which is what I like to call show up and throw up. So you just turn up and you just verbally vomit stuff over people. Well, they probably hate you. Yeah. So spend a disproportionate amount of time early on making sure the other person feels comfortable, because if they do, you will, and you should be fine.
Love it. Thanks.
How does this translate to how you are as a dad, Andy?
So that's a good question. And again, it's all about talking to them on levels they will understand. It's really easy when you talk to a child to apply adult logic. You've all seen adults say to children, you really could do with going to bed soon because you need a good night's sleep so you're ready for school tomorrow. I mean, has any 10-year-old ever said, thanks for pointing out that adult logic. Of course I'll have a good night's sleep. Shall I tidy my toys in a neat pile so I can find them easily in the morning? Said no child ever. So what I do is I always make sure that I'm trying to talk to them. Like, it's easy to think children are small adults. They're not. They're sort of like different beings, right? They think of things differently than we do. So if I'm talking to child 4, I mean, I know we should give our children names, but like if I want to talk to child 4, what's he interested in? He's interested in sport. He's interested in competition. He's interested in beating me. He likes me to read stories to him at bedtime. So I'm always thinking, how can I say things that will resonate with him? So if I want him to go to bed, I don't say go to bed because he don't want to go to bed. But I'll say things like, because he's competitive, hey, child 4, I've hidden your book in your bedroom and you don't know where it is. And I bet you can't find it before I count to 10. And then he's just off. You know, so I don't know why, but I find it extraordinarily easy to empathize with childish people. Maybe that's a secret thing no one's telling me here. But that's the thing. Try and see the world through their side of the beach ball, right? They view the world differently. Mum can't see it all, so I need to explain certain things to them. Tom can't see the world the way a 54-year-old man would, So I need to sort of really think in his shoes. So it's just listening, empathizing, all that sort of stuff.
Well, like I love that. That's why I wanted to ask the question, because it all comes back to the thing that you pointed to right at the beginning. No one sees the world in the same way. So genuinely try and get into someone else's shoes. And, it's, use the word just. It's just listening and empathy. And it's like, or it's all of that without the word. To me, it's like, it's all of that. It's not even just that, it's that. And we underestimate it, I think. It's like, if people, like what I'm hearing in this is, if every single person just could on board, no one sees the world the same way, ever, get really interested in what the perspective of the other person, whether that's your kids, your wife, your husband, your customers, you're likely to have a far better outcome than if you try and force your own agenda, or if you're locked in your own thinking. That seems to be right at the heart of everything. That seems to be right at the heart of everything that you practice?
It is, yeah. And there's various ways that you can say it. I mean, my wonderful mother described this very well. She said, because I said to her a while ago, how come you know everyone's business, Mum? Like, you just talk to everyone about everything and people will tell you things. How do you do that? And she said what you've just said there, Al. She said, I just find out what other people are interested in, and then I talk about that. I thought, brilliant, here I am. When am I going to be able to do my bloody job? 25 years I've been doing it, and that's the best summary of what it is. You find out what they're interested in, and then you talk about that. Yeah? But it's like let's boil it down. If you're writing a proposal in the sales world, how would you apply that to proposals? So if one of you two says, Andy, can you write me a proposal? I'll say, sure, what do you want in it? What the main headings you want in it? And you'll say, can you put in X and Y? I go, yeah, all right then. And so now you've got something that you want. So I find out what you're interested in, and I'll talk about that. No one does this in the sales world. When they do a proposal, they just copy last week's. Yeah? Or they do 20 slides and they don't ask, do you want 20 slides or not? If they go to a meeting with someone, how often does someone get in contact and say, I'm looking forward to our meeting next week. What are the main 2 or 3 things you'd like me to bring with me? How can I best help? Nobody does that. And so find what the other person's interested in, talk about that is a really good rule for life, I think. And the best way to make sure you're doing that is to ask the question, tell me more than you do.
If you could come up with a bumper sticker for life, what would your bumper sticker be? Or what would it say?
It would say, focus everything on their afters, and then everyone will be happy. So find where other people want to be after you and bust a gut to help them get there. And everyone will love you for it. And they benefit more than you ever could. So focus on their afters and do everything you can to help them get them.
Beautiful.
Fantastic.